Yep, we're live. Hello and welcome everyone to our weekly live Q&A session. Before we jump into today's discussion, a quick reminder that we do this live stream every week on Thursday at 4 p.m. Central European Time or at 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. If you have any questions, we are live, so if you have any questions about what we are discussing, feel free to ask us, and we will try our best to answer them. Today with me, I have Jennifer Aguilera Schumacher. I hope I pronounced it correctly.
That works.
Good. So yeah, you're digital project manager and consultant, and also co-founder of 7 South Digital. You also spoke clearly from. We just had a 5 minutes talk before we started, and from the things you were saying, you have a passion definitely for project management, time management, and stuff like that. So it's going to be very interesting. You also spoke, in fact, at WordCamp, right, about project management, WordCamp Europe.
Yes.
And it seems like many other people, it all started like as a passion for design development and slowly turned into an agency. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. I think we all, start at one point, and
Roughly.
you can't. It's just,
Exactly.
that's it.
Either downhill
You
or
want
up.
more.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So thank you very much, Jennifer, for being here. First of all, yeah, how are you? How's it going? Everything okay?
I can't complain. A lot of stuff to do. Has been a busy summer. Preparing a lot for the rest of the year, but yeah, so
Good.
far so good.
Good. For those who do not know you, I gave a bit of introduction, but can you please tell us a bit about yourself and what do you do?
Well, good question. Well, first of all, I'm Jennifer. I've been working with WordPress for about 15, 16 years already. And I did that while I was at university many years ago. And I did sell a WordPress website on a freelance platform. I had no idea. So I taught myself everything, by YouTube tutorials. That's how I started off. And I did back in the days. I did a lot of page building with WP Bakery, and then I dove in as well into the design. And at that time, it was still different tools, right? And I did design and development, and then slowly I transitioned over the years into project management. And this is the area where I found my my passion, so to say, because there's so many moving pieces. And then, by the way, over the last, was that 8 years, I got a lot of additional inspiration because my husband is a kind of person. He's just like, I want to work less. How can we work less? And he inspired me a lot, so to say, and that helped me a lot over the last couple of years to look into workflows. So I'm not only, managing projects here and there, but I think the most important thing is, how can we figure out how to make our lives better, work less, be more intelligent about how we work? And that's why I'm here today.
Yeah, nice. In fact, I think you mentioned it at WordCamp Europe. You had some discussion one day, no? One evening you were on the sofa
Yes.
with your husband. He told you, like, right? Something, was it like that? Something like that?
Yes, I did that. It's awkward sometimes to share something that private, but I read that that's the right thing to do in public speaking. So I thought, okay,
Yeah,
I got it done.
I agree.
Yes.
I think some people, because even I got interested in inviting you and want to talk to you because many people, I see, even not the first time, I see some comments about me online or about other people. I wouldn't, we're not public people, but because we sell plugins and stuff, my name comes up more often, for example. And I think people think that we have it nailed, we have it figured, everything is smooth. But the reality is, like, we are normal people. We make a lot of mistakes. In fact, as I told you, I have a lot to learn from you about these things. And yeah, I've read about it as well, that if you share kind of like your real life, people can relate better to who you are. You're not like this perfect person with no mistakes, right?
Yeah, otherwise you're creating an illusion,
Exactly.
The worst thing is you're also lying to yourself, kind of, it's like you're not a guru per se, but I think it's better if you see yourself as a person that is there and it's like open to like fall down and get up again, and then figure out how, and admitting, okay, maybe that was not the right route, but let's see what we can do better, and then
Exactly.
and I think that's also part of life, what makes us happy in theory, the process, not the goal, right? So
Of course, of course. In fact, yeah, that kind of like leads us to the first question, like what are the most common mistakes you see? Like whether it's an agency or a business building an in-house project with WordPress, which are the most common mistakes?
There are many. But overall, many things I see, and to be honest, it doesn't matter if it's like a big agency. I have seen things also like that happen in very big ones, but also in small teams. It's like pretty often they think from scratch, and everything gets touched. Like, okay, it's like, let's understand the client. Let's take notes of what they want, but we do not yet know, what do we build with? Do we select a theme? Do we work with custom? Do we do work with ACF? And there are a lot of like, they rethink every wheel and the entire board and then make decisions. But many of them lack like the standard stuff. And then what happens is that maybe later on down the road, when the project comes more or less to an end, then decisions get like questions. Hey, why did I give you an example? The client asked for an event section on the website. Okay, cool. What plugin do we use? They discuss everything, built it. And when it comes towards the end in the content part, now the client says like, oh, but where do I add reoccurring events? Oh, no, this doesn't do reoccurring events. Now the client is in a dispute. Client still wants the recurring event, argues that should have been included. If you do not have like the correct documentation to justify or defend your position, I've seen many that then go in, redo this entire thing for free. Their margin goes like, and then they say and justify it. Okay, yeah, we had to make the client happy. There was no other way for us. And that's sad because it happens very, very often. And it's mentioned in big and small agencies that they do not set enough standards and boundaries to protect their relationships, so to say.
So is it more of a, in this, especially like in this case, like they want an event section, but they didn't think of recurring events. Is it more of a communications issue, or maybe agencies, business don't have the tools to communicate, or what could it be?
No, I think, let's say it like this. One is like documentation. I think the more complex stuff gets, the more value is also in like documenting. This is what's included. This is what's not included. And then being like asserting also like, hey, if we want to do something that's not listed in here, that this comes with extra cost. Because like you need to somewhere have to, have a document, like a written expression of what happens if something is not in that list. So for example, what I do is like a statement of work. You have to be very precise. If you have written documentation, that is what you can always refer to. And so that's most of the time what's missing, because it happens a lot of emails. Like, yes, they have an offer, but maybe the offer is not very defined to all those details. You don't put all those details in there. And then you have an email about this here, an email about this there. And I have had projects, for example, where they discussed so many details over email with their subcontractors, with the designer that they contracted, the other developer that was a freelancer that was involved. And then nobody knew what was the single source of truth, because there was none. Right. So if you do have a good documentation that enables good communication, you can't be trying to be a good communicator, but the like if you have shattered information all over, it will not enable you to be a very good communicator.
I see. So if you are building a project and you have, as you said, maybe an email thread with some designers there, an email thread with one of maybe the clients is a business with someone from that business, and maybe another email thread with someone else from that business with different. Is it a question of like compiling everything in a central document kind of thing, and making sure everything is covered in one document? Is that always like the most important task? Or what is the approach kind of thing? Yeah.
So what I do is one is like the statement of work. So that actually defines what is it. We're just talking about projects, right? So
yeah, and quite frankly, in fact, this, in all fairness, like I'm really interested in this discussion, because be it a WordPress project, be it any other type of project, it's actually you can see. I think you can see a lot of common problems, be it we are developing a plugin, someone's developing a website, someone is developing, I don't know, some custom CMS. It's always the same. It's always that problem between someone who's developing, building something, and someone who has paid for it. So
Yes.
it's always
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's all
Yeah.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, what are yours? Because as you said, like we have a lot of an email thread from here, an email thread from here, discussion
Yeah.
here, like how
All over the place.
how should
Yes.
exactly yeah, how should we go about it?
So what I do, you cannot fully avoid this, right? Do certain emails, it will be there, but I think you have to have your reference points. So there are options. Let's say you do the offer, and maybe your offer is like a bit more not that precise in certain things, but on the terms and conditions, you have an option to say, hey, right after the offer, we will do a statement of work. That statement of work will assess fully what will be done and the criteria of each item. And that statement of work is what we then sign off before we go, for example, into the project. And this is just giving you a rough guideline, right? And this is the features that we want to cover. I give you a very, very stupid example of a project that went way over budget, which I took over from another project manager a while ago. And what happened there when I came in, nobody knew that, like, the client said, but we're missing a block section. And nobody could respond to me. Did they order a block section? Was it part of the project? And nobody knew, because there was no documentation. And the project manager before that had everything in his emails, and then just trying to understand this by gathering a bit of information from here is exhausting. And that's a lot of time. Where do you log this? Where do you register this? Who's paying for this? As an agency, do you want to accumulate a lot of unpaid hours? Right?
I don't think anyone wants that.
No, right? So I do the statement of work thing. That's one. And then this next thing I do is I copy parts of it, which is mainly the list of requirements, and put it into a status update document. You can use tools like Notion, or let's say if you have it in Confluence and you have an external share plugin, there are many, Coda.io or something, any tool you like. And then in the status update, it's a one-page template, and I just have the list of requirements. I put up each item a status and a checklist with what is it that we're going to do there. This is not the task per se that the developers are working on, or the designers are working on. This is not it. It's just for me to be present with the client, because this document, the status update, is what they can see, what they get from me regularly every 2-3 weeks ish. And then I keep updating them on this. And then we have, like, at the end, like maybe 6-7 reports, right? And then they go all the way from the kickoff report to the wrap-up report. And no matter which dispute, I can always refer and say, like, hey, as you see this, I already informed you about this situation or this change, or we took note of this change in 3 reports up. And I can always go back and justify things. And this has been, for me, the biggest game changer, this continuous communication, because this helps me, even if I got in feedback from an email, let me take note and add this to a report. Now I had this always in the report, and now I did not need to go back into my emails and look everything up, because it was already in the report. And that's what I mean, because now that you have your communication like centralized, it helped me a lot to communicate better. In the report, of course, it's not just the feature list. I also have, depending on the size of the project, maybe a timeline with a nice little Gantt that I update if it's a larger one, right? I have a few notes on the budget, and I always update this. How much budget did we spend so far? 20%. So far, so good. We're at 50%. We should be cautious because of X, Y, Z. And at the very end, I have 2 more things, like risks. What could go wrong? Just for you to know. And usually they're always the same thing. They're always the same. I never change that section. And then I have a section that says, what is it that I need from the client? What is it that I need from you? And I think you know that as well. It's like, not like, it's always like smooth sailing and we never need something from them. It's like collaboration. We need input. We need information. Sometimes we need their help to sign certain things off. And I think these regular updates, that's the biggest thing.
Of course, because part of the project usually also
Mm.
depends on the client, right? Because you might need, I don't know, specific guidelines, content, images. Like,
Mm.
is that right? Like, how do you fit that in the format, making sure it's efficient and you don't lose too much time back and forth, having to stop? You started something, then you stop because you don't have that information.
You mean like gathering the information that we need from the
Yeah, for
client?
example, yeah,
Mhm.
exactly, yeah. Because that's
Yeah.
a factor as well, no? It's something that should be factored in the whole.
So what I
Like,
usually do is I have a questionnaire in the beginning before we kick things off, and most of the info is already in there. But it happens sometimes that, we ask them about, let's say, certain passwords, and then maybe down the road in the project, somebody changed the password and then we can't log in anymore into their Google account or stuff like this. So this might happen, but yeah, the questionnaire. And I actually got that idea from a US agency. I think they did this, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And they have them fill in on the questionnaire, not just one person at the company, depends on the size. Who are the stakeholders? Who is are all those people that are involved in the project? Who needs to feel heard? Who has a voice? Will be using the site? Who should we listen to? Because I've also had, for example, a very big project, six-figure project. When the site was done, it was rolled out to the, let's say, to actual usage, to the staff that would be using it. They were so unhappy because they said they did not find anymore what they were looking for. And what went wrong is that in the beginning, they were not involved, in like the decision of how you use the website. What do you need? What kind of information are you looking for? So the architecture that was, the architectural decision that was made was not matching the expectation of the team or the ground staff that was actually using the website on a day-to-day basis. And they spent six figures to figure that out. So that was a tough one, for example.
very interesting. In fact, it is the first time I heard about this. It's a good idea that you send a questionnaire. Like, what are your expectations? Because,
Yeah,
and I
love it.
also like the idea that you can send a questionnaire to multiple people. Because even though you'll be dealing with the same client, which is a business, there are multiple people who might have multiple different opinions, different expectations. So you're trying to. It's very very interesting. And you also mentioned in the beginning that one of the most common problems is that they try to start from scratch with every project.
Yeah.
So do you mean like you should always kind of have some sort of, as you develop more and more projects, you should have some sort of standard framework or standard approach or standard checklist to go about it? What are you
And
recommending?
it's just a checklist. A checklist is great. That's also a good part. But let me tell you this. So for us, what was that, 5 years ago? So we were like, I was pushing a lot in sales. Okay, let's do more. Try to get more of our relationships on board to get additional projects and stuff. And then we noticed that. So every project we made the same basic decisions, like, is this a theme, or do we work with ACF? But if we work with ACF, what do we want to do here? And then like, we did not reuse anything. It was like, but we have done an event section for another client like last year. Can't we reuse stuff? And then you start thinking, like, am I being inefficient? And could I make more margin if we would think more intelligently about this? Because if you run the agency, you kind of like, that's your money. You do not want, you can, if you retain more, you can start to invest it, for example, in your own processes, reinvest it in certain things that are also good for the team to move forward. So as we noticed that we were like, every time, for new projects from scratch and new decisions, etc., we thought, okay, how about we build our own template and, let's say, base theme, and then we just reuse it. And then we did that for 2 years. You do project work, and then always when you have a bit of a gap, you refine your base theme and then reuse in the next project, refine it a bit. And it was always a bit of a loop, but it was never, because it was never a main project. It was always a side thing. It was making things better, but not yet that we said, like, oh wow, we did make like the like like the kicker thing out of it, right? And then we said, why not think about it, like many websites, they buy like a theme license, and then you also buy the license for ACF, and then you build this and stuff. And then we thought, so what we could do is maybe we give it a nice name, wrap it, and then tell the client that they have to pay us for the license.
That's a smart idea. That's a very good idea.
Yeah. So that's, but yeah, we're still not yet there, right? It was still like a side thing.
No.
So then the next 2 years, then we took to really take more time, effectively more time. I think we took ish every second Friday or something to fully, dedicate it on this and improve it. How can we do better on page speed? What is it like that efficiency wise? Code? How do we let's say also make it more modular approach, object oriented, all of that kind of stuff. So how do we create a very good base that even, and that's the thing that I like very much, usually what we do in WordPress is like, okay, maybe we want to have a nice media library, right? Those with folders. What do? We add a plugin. Maybe we want in the WordPress dashboard a few custom items, because what I like to do is I like to film like Loom videos, instructional videos, and how to maintain the content, how to edit things. And then I post those into the dashboard of WordPress, so that when the client logs in, they see the video. They if they have a new employee, they can just say, hey, they're instructional videos. You can find them there. Anything you need. Onboarding makes it super much more easy for their team, right? And I just had positive feedback with that. And then what you do, you add a plugin. But we did build that in our base theme, so we did not need that many plugins. So in that, I think, rose the entire quality level. And then we made a base that can be copied. It's called master base, that's it. No fancy name, just a master base. And then on every project, we reused it and improved it a bit, reused it and improved it a bit. And we will start, like the next project we do, the very, very next one, that's the first one where we charge a license. And
interesting.
To the
All the
clients,
best,
yes.
all the best with the project.
Yeah, but you need to build something that you can replicate, because that saves you time, and then you can see how things are faster and easier for you. So that's one part. Yeah,
it's a good point you're mentioning this, because like subconsciously, I don't know, I always assumed project management is actually managing a project, but never thought of that you actually should and can invest time in building tools to help you, like not specifically just to manage a project, but to help you kind of like for help you with future projects move faster, and as you said, like easily replicate and scale what you are doing rather than having to reinvent the wheel, which is very interesting.
Well, in theory, you could argue that's not project management; it's more like operational, right? Because that,
it's
that's operations.
If you look at the grand
yeah.
scheme of things, kind of thing, when you are as the project manager managing something that your business is doing, it's also part, like as you said, like sometimes it's also like the perspective. You had this thing already, but no one saw it as a tool. It's like, okay, it's something on the side. But when it clicks, like, oh, that's actually a tool which we can use, then you take a different perspective. You start treating the project differently. You start, as you said, allocating time for it to improve it. And as we're seeing with you, it leads to something even more fruitful, because you're not just saving time, but now you're actually selling it as a part of your project. So they have to pay the license to use that one, and then of course have a project on top of that. And so it's very interesting, because as I said, like it's always, there's much more to just, oh, let's manage, here's a list of tasks, here's a contract. It's much more complex than that, usually.
Yeah. You know what I figured out is also it's great to have all these SOPs, but doesn't guarantee you that people will follow it. So it's like you still have to like be on top of this. But what I learned like recently over the last couple of years, the more, let's say, structured and automatic workflows that you have and things that, just click in, it's like nobody needs to think about it, because that's, it just follows the certain structure, and it makes onboarding easier. Makes it easier for me to find resources that can handle it, because if I do not have any structure, anything that automatically, or anything that pops in, or any SOP, then I'm very much set up to lose money as an agency. Yeah. on
Yes,
many things you do.
and
Yeah.
it happens quite often, unfortunately.
Yes.
Do you see a difference in the type of mistakes people do in their projects, depending on the size of the project? So typically, if it's a very big project or a very small project, is there a lot in common when it comes to what type of mistakes they do, or there's a big difference?
Well, so most of the problems are still the same, right? So because, for example, even if it's a smaller project, you have the similar mistakes, like when things move from design to development and then towards the client and stuff. You can have the same issues in a big project too. The problem is in a big project, usually the mistakes cost more money. So it's like a bit of the what was it? This Elon Musk said, if you allocate 6 weeks to a project, it will take you 6 weeks. But if you allocate just 10 days, it will take you 10 days, right?
I heard, yeah, I heard it somewhere. Yes, yes.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing is not like similarities in the mistakes. It's like, what is um, the approach of the people that work at the company and how they treat those mistakes or those issues.
Mhm.
Do you have people in your team that are looking at problems from another lens and look at it as an opportunity and say, hey, let's figure out how can we change this, make it better? How can we implement something that helps us to work faster on certain things? But if you do not have a team that does not have this lens, then it's harder. And I think it depends on the company that you're at. But if you have a smaller company, a smaller agency where you do not have the resources to hire somebody, wait 3 months and see if you like him, and then no, maybe not, and then you do need to make better decisions in a smaller agency, because you do want to build a team, retain the people that you invest in. It's not like a big company who they might not care that much if 5 months later that person leaves and another person comes in. So I think that in a smaller team, it's most likely a better starting point to actually have people that support this and say, let's figure something out. But in a bigger agency, might be that they do not necessarily have that many people who push for figuring something out to make things faster and better.
Interesting. So, is it fair to say that when there are these problems between the builder and the recipient, basically, is it fair to say that most of the time it's more of a people problem rather than lack of tools or other things? Yeah.
Yeah. Like I once went, for example, that's years ago, a mentor of mine, he's a sales manager, and we went to a sales conference about Salesforce, about their software and stuff. But yeah, you can have a very fancy software, but if nobody really is enticed to use it the way it should be used, or the way it could be used to bring you the best benefit, then you're still not getting the benefit, right? So I think it's a lot about the mentality of the team as well, and like, what is it that we can do? Maybe you have like a few that are. That doesn't mean that everybody needs to be full on board, like yes, and full of ideas. You're not getting like 50 unicorns to work for you. That's also
That
not
goes
gonna
usually the
happen.
other way around, and everyone has an idea and nothing ever gets done, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But if you have like some promoters in the company that push for this and drive this kind of change, and like actively promote or actively follow up on this, that's because that's if you have a couple that go in a certain direction, and they can motivate and take the others with them. So that's also a good point. But yeah, it's a mentality thing. Do you want that this to be easier? And if you want this, and if the pain is big enough, and for me to be saying like it usually has been that way. It's like, if my pain was big enough and I was so stressed out and I did not want to do this anymore, then I had to figure out how to change. And that's the biggest thing. Yeah. Has to hurt.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So actually, finding the right people and building a good team solves I don't know the exact, but solves most of the problem kind of thing, or helps you solve the problem and move faster and be able to solve issues much faster and deliver faster?
Yeah, I'll tell you I'll share another example. There are in development, right? In development, you have different, usually developer personalities. You have those that are not very communicative, those that are more like, okay, yeah, you give you a task and you just follow the task and that's it. They're not very proactive. But then you have others who are a bit more like the critical thinker. Hey, wait, in this ticket, I don't know, I need to know XYZ. This has this impact. They are more of a critical thinker, I would say, and that they're not shy to communicate that. And when I switched to people like that, it changed everything. Because for me, it was very hard to work with people, especially as imagine if you have like a project manager position. And I see that in many companies as well. They have project managers that have no clue. They don't know. They rely on the technical evaluation that they get from their team. But if they have worked with people that are not very communicative and that do not say or do not share necessarily what could go wrong or what to, be cautious about, or, maybe you need to consider this, or did you think about the fact that this plugin or this program or this code does not include XYZ, or it might be a problem in 4 or 5 years, or what if this is no longer maintained? These kind of decisions, if they don't tell the project manager and the project manager is non-technical, and then maybe if you years down the road, you're in a situation where you think, oh, damn, maybe we should have thought about this earlier. So yeah, I think changing to, and then again, in the age of AI, strategy becomes way more important. Communication becomes way more important. And yeah, so
Yeah.
that's
One
how
of my
I think about it.
ex-managers used to tell me, when I was working at the company, used to tell me that like basically communication is the key to everything. And in project management, clearly it depends much more on people and communication than the actual technical. Because as you said, like
Yeah.
I remember I used to work for a company who had a really, really good developer, like as like this type geek who could solve every problem. But he wasn't good at communicating with people. So because the company was still small, we came at a crossroad where he could either become like lead developer and hopefully lead all the developers because he had the technical expertise. So like when there are problems, everyone can go to him. However, he didn't have, I would say, like the right people because he wasn't a good communicator. So he was still very good, but he ended up the developer in a corner office, like wherever there's like a very big problem, we just send it to him and he solves it on his own. But yeah, he lost the opportunity because of course, and then of course the lead developer, maybe technically he wasn't as good as him, but he was a very good people's person communicator. So he could help the team, motivate the team, and move them in the direction the company needed. So yeah, it's the same as you were saying, like project management. Of course, you still need the project manager, but it's a very people problem kind of thing. Like you really need to have the right team because you can be the best project manager in the world, but if you don't have the team to work with, you're still most probably at it, right?
Yeah. So, and then putting yourself in the position of the client, right? I have one developer from the UK. He's very good at that. Like what could happen, and is this decision in the best interest of the client? Did we think about ABC? He's the best in rethinking this, and I love that because, like, as a PM, perspective, it's like I need to rely on the people that I work with, and the better that we have a team that can communicate and then put the client's interest or like in the center, and to figure out what is it that we can do to make this good for them, then we have a better output.
Of course, and you cannot, especially on big projects, you cannot micromanage. You cannot speak to everyone involved in the project. No, you depend on a key number of people, and based on the feedback they are able to give you, then you can make your own decisions, right?
Yeah, maybe I can share that too. And I figured that out, I think, a year and a half ago, or almost 2. By now, when I have a project, I don't create the tickets anymore. I have the development team create the tickets. I create only, let's say, base tickets and organizational stuff, but everything around the development, the tickets are created by the dev team. And then here goes the other fun part. We also looked into how to standardize stuff, right? The same thing, how to make things easier. And right now we're working on a setup where we predefine certain elements and then also certain add-ons, so to say, like an event section, a membership area. So, and then what is it that we usually have in this to predefine the tickets? And that it automatically imports all of those in Jira and automatically creates the repository, automatically loads in the code of those add-on sections. So we just spend time on editing these instead of recreating. So yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, in fact,
Yeah.
you mentioned it during your talk at WordCamp Europe as well. No, like you like the idea of documentation, communication, setting boundaries. For example, it's not just like, oh, let's just send any support ticket. You have, for example, as an agency, you should have an add-on like X hours of support are included. If not, if they are used, then you
Yes.
right? 'Cause the more you can standardize these things, and the more transparent and clear you are, your communication, the clearer it is towards your customer or client, the better the more you can standardize, and the less diversions you have, right?
Yes, and you can always refer back to this, like it's more like, so there's a big conversation, right? The world is shifting, right? Because things are a bit more tense. Not everybody's knowing what's going to happen with our industry in the next couple of years. Will there be a lot of price pressure, and who's going to be on which side in a couple of years? What's going to happen to our projects, etc. And one theory is that this will now trigger a lot of productization, where they try to productize businesses, and then also, for example, service packages, instead of like, hey, I need a small fix. This small fix is 3 hours and I charge you 3 hours. No, you have to buy my smallest package is, for example, this number of hours, but it also includes, like, I don't know, like maybe every 6 months a check-in on content, and we help you review the site. So certain things. But yeah, there is right now a lot of talk on the impact. Do we want to do everything based on an hourly deal? And can we maybe package certain things to have the benefit of actually improving our processes and working with a better margin?
Interesting. Since you mentioned AI, are you using it effectively? Are you using it as an effective project management tool? Does it help you?
There's still a lot of gray area. So what is it that you use it for, right? And then how do you use it? Because it's not just I use AI and it works, right? Maybe your prompt is not the right one. And then what you get is not the greatest output. But let's say yes, for refining communication and reviewing tickets, for example, and maybe suggesting a couple of edits here and there, and like reporting. Yes, I do use AI to, let's say, formulate my writing a bit better, but that's right now it. There are more opportunities and more things. Maybe I'm just thinking, should I share that? Because it's a very interesting area, but it's not that easy. For example, my husband, he's working on a proposal generator with AI, but it's not that easy, right? It's like you have to fully understand and then see the same thing. You try to figure out how is it that you can use it to build something that makes your life easier. And now here's the other thing. Now that certain things like vibe coding, right, etc., like there's other certain things that can make our lives easier, so that instead of us paying a lot of license fee to this tool, could we use AI to build like our own mini internal tools that cover what we need and only what we need? And then as developers say, we maintain this is our mini software, we use it, which is fine. And does this maybe give our company a better edge? Because now we do not need to pay Jira and this tool and this tool and this tool. So there are opportunities out there, but I'm not yet fully making the use out of it. But maybe within the next 2-3 years, there are definitely more options, and then more knowledge for everybody to actually use and build your own kind of structures that serve your agency, I would say.
Very interesting, especially you mentioned the point that you can kind of like build your own tools now with vibe coding to use. In fact, kind of like leads me to the next question because we go to this dilemma. I've been through it not just with Melapress, but even through previous jobs. People who have their own developers usually always have this dilemma. We need an ERP system. Like, should we pay for an ERP system or should we develop in-house? Because people who have developers think they already have the we have the development, of course, the development resources, because we have developers. Do we have the knowledge? So, like, as a PM, as a project manager, like, I'm sure you've seen this in the past. Like, where does the line, where is the border where you can say, okay, this we should do it in house. This we better pay for it, quite frankly.
The question, or I think the question is, what is it that you define as in-house, right? Do you want a person hired full-time for something small that they continuously work on? Or is it like a bigger project, you need to hire several roles? And then if you need to hire several roles, are you in a good position to evaluate those candidates? Because like, it's not,
the problem is I've been through it like in a previous company. We needed an ERP system, and back then, I'm talking about 13, 14 years ago. And back then, looking at all the ERP systems where they had so many features, they were so broad. It's not the ERP weren't the problem. It's just because every ERP provider was trying to build an ERP system that works for every type of business, from the small to the big one. So we said, yeah, okay, we have a development team. We have knowledge of how to develop an application. We're developing something totally different, security scanners. But we said, okay, yeah, let's just hire a developer, full-time junior developer, and we can develop our own ERP system. However, 2 years down the line, you realize like there's a reason why ERP systems are complex. There's a reason why they cost a certain level of money, because 2 years down the line, we ended up with 3 developers full-time maintaining the system, and it was still nowhere where we wanted to be, And
that's also true.
This is not the first time. This is something I experienced, but most of my friends and most of the people I know work in IT, or even if you look at LinkedIn, this is a very common problem, especially with software companies. Like, oh, we have developers, we have technical knowledge, let's develop our own ERP system. Let's develop our own, I don't know, email management system. And then you end up usually, because then you end up like, oh, we already invested 2 years, salaries for 2 years for the people, all the time, some other people helping as well. Like, so yeah, like, what are maybe the deciding factors to make this smart decision? Like, listen, maybe this we shouldn't do it in house, and we might as well pay a license and use a third-party service.
So that's like the example of the ERP, like a bigger system, right? So just thinking about it. So when I think back my experience, I've seen, for example, also projects where they internally started building, and then, for example, 2 years go by and it was never really in use. They just built on it continuously and it never rolled out, and they spent a lot of money. And that's the thing. So I think, for example, when it comes to the in-house decision, let's say, yes, maybe you're developers, but do you know the technology that you're building in? Is it something completely new? And then, because it sounds weird, I think, but we are, we human, we learn with our mistakes. And if you have, for example, over time, a lot of people like switching, and then this person works on this person works on it. And if you do not have a common, as every project, right, a common set of standards to follow, because it's like a different technology, and it's like comes like this Frankenstein over time.
Yeah, exactly.
Frankenstein, is that to say? Then you have wasted a lot of like opportunity and things there. But overall, like, the question is, what's going to happen, right? What's going to happen in the next couple of years due to AI? Are we still in the same situation than back then with this project that you mentioned, with the project that I mentioned, for example? Are there certain opportunities for us to take it like as an open door to improve our internal systems, etc.? Or maybe, as you mentioned, for clients to make the decision, hey, let's do this in-house? Or is this something where we always should say, hey, I don't know how to hire the right people, and admit that this is a technology, this is something so different from our regular workflow, from our regular work. Can we, if we do it in-house, would we risk this go wrong because we might hire the wrong people because we're not yet very good in how to make the decision on if this is the right person? And if at the time, if we have to have the wrong person here, the wrong person here, there, is it okay for us to maybe end up with a Frankenstein? What would be here the first potential frustration? And that's, I think, for an agency, the best selling point, right? Is this like, what is it that could go wrong if you do it in-house? Okay, like, and this is more from a sales perspective and that communication. What is it that I could take care of and make sure that not happens to you? But this is, again, like a sales conversation, because usually when you try to sell a project and if you are in conversations, I'm sure like when you make the decision in-house, you might have most likely also had a couple of offers from other agencies to see, what does it cost me? What is the comparison? And then as an agency, it's your job to convince them that that's the better approach to go with them for being safe and faster.
Interesting. Yeah. And you mentioned, in fact, a very important point that, like, I think one of the key questions, like, do I have the expertise in that field? Because, like, back then, like, we were developing a security scanner, and we realized understanding ERP systems is not something that we actually do. So it was something totally different from what we are used to do. So you end up investing much more time than you would usually do. And it happened to us in the past as well. Like we had at Melapress, we had a capture plugin, which we sold a few months ago for that reason. Because like we focus mostly on security plugins and stuff. We acquired this plugin because it looked interesting. But capture in general was something so different than what we were used to do. I mean, we knew WordPress, we knew PHP, so it's fine. But just the scope of the plugin and the way it's marketed and the way type of crowd we are dealing with, type of audience, was so different than what we're used to do, that to do anything on this plugin required so much more effort and resources, because we had to research everything was almost new. Except from development, everything, the concept, the idea of spam capture, whatever, we're not used to it. It's not something that we have expertise in. So it took us so much more resources to run it.
But then the question would be, now what's the learning out of this, right? Then the question would be, potentially, if you have, let's say, in-house the development team, but what you're missing is the expertise in that exact area, and somebody who has done this before, somebody has already gone through the pain, through the learnings and the oh shit moments, right? Could you have your in-house dev team cover the development, but could you onboard maybe somebody who consults you and brings in external knowledge just for this kind of guidance? And could that potentially help you, or could have helped save a lot of time and pain and hours? Does it, how do you make the question is the combo of the people on the team? Who is on the team? And what kind of knowledge do they bring to this project? Exactly. And if everybody that is involved has never done this before, then there will be problems, because you have never done this before. Yeah,
exactly.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. And there's a difference between developing a solution, as in technically writing the code, versus understanding what it's supposed to do and how the users are going to use it. I mean, I look at, again, another example, personal example. When we developed the first version of WP Activity, a logging plugin that we have, WP Activity Log, 10 years out the line, I look at the plugin so differently than I looked at it back then, because we've learned so much. And that is not just about PHP and code. That is more about the experience of seeing people using it, people reporting problems, we experiencing problems, that is almost like invaluable kind of thing. And it applies again to this ERP. So if at Melapress tomorrow we will need a system, I don't know, to handle our emails, for example, I'm not going to develop it in-house. I prefer to go to an agency who has the expertise already with emails, because I don't want to start from scratch. Because we do have the PHP development knowledge, but we don't have the knowledge in that area, that expertise.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
It is. So if you're starting a new project, if you had to pick up like one red flag that you usually like you see early in a project that almost is always a sign of failure or trouble? What would that be?
I think the biggest, let's say, well, I work a lot with other agencies, right? And I get a lot of projects where we get all the info, we document everything, but then I see that they do not do that. And then I see that the documentation we share with them is not getting to the client. And that's like the biggest red flag. Documentation needs to be shared, because we had a lot of situations where things were passed on to the account manager, et cetera, or their internal project manager, the one that close to the client. Also in the client company itself, there was somebody assigned to it, but it never got to the higher level of decision making. Everything was moving, going, and then suddenly we got a decision midway. It's like, no, we don't like that. We don't want this. We had to redo this entire design just because somebody at the top then, because the information did not go there. So I think, again, it's communication, right? It always dials down to that. Who is involved here? Who needs to know? Who needs to have an update on the status? And then I also noticed, like with these status reports, it's great, but if I share them and I just update them, this is good. But I really sometimes need to, and that sounds weird, but push people's face into this. Like, there it is, just mentioning. Please note, can you confirm you have seen it? Because otherwise, same thing, they don't look at it. It's good if you have the documentation, you can always refer back to it. But if you never shared it with them, it's the same as if it would not have existed, right? And I think that's, for me, a red flag. Like, if the company or the agency is not documenting things enough, or maybe they say, oh, this project is so super small, we don't document anything. Well, would there be an option to just document at least a certain part of it? Because otherwise, if you don't, you run a much higher risk into being the one who is diving into unpaid hours, who's ending up with frustration. Or that the client worse says, I'm not going to pay until XYZ is done. And then you're sitting there and you have to make the decision of, like, I do this, or I wait XYZ month for invoices, or maybe the client at the end will not even pay and I run behind the money. I've seen many of these things happening too. I think the same thing, it comes down to communication and documentation. If they don't document anything, super red flag.
Interesting. So apart from documents, like, are there any other tools that you kind of like would recommend people using for like managing a project and making sure it's successful?
Yes. So I don't want to say exactly like, hey, this. I have a few things that I think that are cool, that are very neat. For example, I do like some browser extensions. There is this responsive viewer browser extension. So if you want to check responsive, I don't know if you know this Chrome extension. It's
Yeah, there are quite a few actually, but yeah, like, to check how the website looks right when it's more by different time resolutions.
Different, yes, but on many different ones. It shows you, if you want on a big screen, like 7, 8, 9 different sizes all at once, and you scroll and all of them scroll through. Super neat. So I like that one, responsive viewer. Then there's another one, is this perfect pixel, where you can lay over the website a screenshot of the layout that you have from Figma, for example, the export added transparency, and then you can see more in detail. And I have my developers do that because, of course, what I do not like is this ping pong. What happens pretty often is a developer does something, then it goes to, let's say, the designer for a review, and then they play ping pong, and the developer says, like, you tell me my mistakes. Like, this is a time drain. This is very, very heavy on the team. And it makes both of the parties unhappy, because, like, the designer says, why doesn't he check that? The developer says, why should I check that? And so what I do, like, I use these kind of tools to help and make sure that the development part, that they can check their stuff up and down before they say, I am ready, please have a look, so that we get as much as possible out. So these are just 2 examples, but I'm not like the friend of saying, like, hey, you should use ClickUp, or like, there's so many great tools out there. There's Teamwork. Some people like Jira. Some people think that Jira is too complex. I think it's about what you do within these tools And then how do you think that you can build maybe your tiny micro solutions, again, just saying, that help you to be more efficient? I'm just giving a quick example here, very quick. So you mentioned support earlier, right? So support
Yes.
retainers. So assuming you focus on your WordPress agency on selling support retainers, and you have the smallest package is, let's say, 20 hours a year, right? It's just 20 hours for basic attention, helping with bugs, where you can ask questions, etc. And every time you log to a ticket, these logs get synced in a mini system, and that mini system outputs a report and reports to the client how many hours you use every month, and then lists the tickets that you covered with this. I did that. We did that this year. I was so happy with it because now it automatically generates for all the clients that are on a retainer an automatic report. I can see automatically how much budget was spent, how much budget is left. And as a PM, I do not need to look that up, calculate it somewhere. And I automatically share those reports with the client. And every Wednesday, we cross-check our logs so that it's always up to date. But this is what I mean, right? You need to see what kind of tools you have and how could I potentially leverage maybe certain things that are out there to just develop like certain micro solutions for me that help me to make my life easier.
Interesting. In fact, I think one important aspect we can take from what you just mentioned, because it happens to me and I think to everyone, sometimes you are so consumed in the process that we tend to fail to stop for a bit, okay, and take a bit of an overview look at, okay, maybe we need this tool now. We were just so used to the status quo. Oh, we've been always using that tool. Full stop. Without question. Oh, we've always done it that way. So you never kind of like stop, say, okay, why are we doing it this way? And because every time we're doing this, it's creating a problem. Why don't we take a step back, look at the process, and see how we can improve it? I think that's also a very, very important step, no?
Yeah, maybe I can share one thing. What I did today, and I did this actually for this call because you sent me a couple of questions beforehand, and I thought, okay, you know what, that's actually quite a good idea. I talk a lot to ChatGPT. It's more like a bit of like I use it to tell it, okay, I am upset about this. This is not going good. This is wrong. What is it that I could do to solve this? And just like my psychologist, right?
I was going to say, is it your psychologist?
Yeah, kind of, yeah. But I wrote a prompt, a standard prompt, where you can rant to ChatGPT about your project. You can, let's say, like a post-mortem, right? The project is done, and then you just tell ChatGPT, okay, this is what's wrong. You can even use the voice feature if you like. I do that a lot because I think it's so nice if you can just talk instead of type. And then this ChatGPT takes your in the prompt, takes what you said, asks a couple of additional questions, and then based on these additional questions and what you said, it provides you with up to 5 suggestions on what you could do regarding SOPs, regarding maybe things that you could automate, actionable ideas. Then it asks you to help refine those ideas. And when you say that this is done, then it just tells you, hey, please note those down and document. It just needs to be half an hour after a project where you just, get things off your chest. Maybe have this help with ChatGPT or any other AI to just support you in like formulating a few ideas or actionable ideas, and then save them a document. Maybe you will look at it once a month or once every 2 months or something. But just in that moment, getting things off your chest is so valuable. And I put that in a prompt, and I linked it on my website just to download. So if, because I think this is so cool if I do it without a super nice prompt, but I wrote a nice one today because it's powerful to me. Just get things off my chest and see what I
Interesting.
can do.
In fact, a friend of mine, Sandro, recently mentioned something to me, AAR, after action report. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. So basically, I read it in a book. It's something that is used from the US military. So whenever they do something, then after the generals or whoever is responsible, they sit down and they go, okay, what went well, what went wrong, and where we can improve, kind of thing. And to be honest, I started using it because in the past we had a few releases where we had some issues. Something went wrong during the release, we had some bugs. And it's something similar, like your psychologist.
Yeah.
But
yes.
we sit down, okay, what went wrong here? okay, we had this problem. Why we had this? And you start tracing back, and so I was like, okay, this is a problem. So let's improve it now before we start working on the next project. So after action report, the idea is to, whenever you do something, either a release or either deliver a project, as you said, or I don't know, you analyze the situation, because usually we're so involved in the process that we don't step back. So you step back, what went wrong, why, and usually that leads you to a lot of answers, and you can improve your process for
Ideas.
when you repeat in the
Yeah.
future, which is something similar to what you've done, basically.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot,
Just
Jennifer. Thank you
sharing,
very much. No worries. Before we
Yeah.
end this episode, can you please tell people where they can reach you, websites, LinkedIn, where you are, and where they can learn more about you and what you do?
Well, I am more active on LinkedIn than anything else. And there's the link to my website where I have that link to the prompt. I also have a link to a standard SOP example, a WordPress, support workflow template. So I think this is great. And over time, I want to push more of those examples, just, for anybody to download. If there's any value that I could share, I'm more than happy, because I was a very frustrated freelancer for a very long time when I started out more than 10 years ago. So, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Happy to. Yeah.
Good. Thank you very much, Jennifer. Thank you everyone for following this episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you next week on Thursday at the same time. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jennifer. Thanks a lot.
Take care.